Coach Reagan, I woke up this morning with the very sad news that Joel Lindner had passed away. When I saw the message, I quite literally said, "This is a joke. This can't be happening." I've never met Joe in person, but we've been friends for approximately 3 years, writing back and forth, helping each other with YouTube videos. And seeing as Joe is only 30 years of age, and to see that the guy was in such great shape, he was a gifted athlete his entire life, and he was always striving to be shredded 365 days a year. This guy's physique was remarkable, incredible. He had the dream of becoming an IFBB pro. Now, because he's only 30 and he suddenly died, and as I'm recording this, I'm hearing that his girlfriend is saying that it was an aneurysm, and so what that is a weakening of a blood vessel. And so imagine that you have a balloon, and there's one spot in the balloon that's a little bit thinner than the rest, and you squeeze on the balloon. That is the most likely spot where something could burst. And so in an aneurysm, this is happening in a blood vessel. Now remember, with higher blood pressure, the risk is a lot greater. Just think of it. That weakened balloon, if there's not a lot of air in it, it's probably not going to bust. But if you keep blowing on the balloon, whatever the spot is the weakest, that is the most likely spot that's eventually going to burst. And so apparently this is what happened. I don't know for sure. And an aneurysm, it can occur throughout the body. It could be somewhere in the heart. It could be in the brain. And so depending on where this occurred and how important that blood vessel is to your survival, well, that's going to dictate the ultimate outcome. She states that 3 days before this happened, he had a pain in his neck, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was from an aneurysm. The pain could be something different. He could have been training at the gym. Last I spoke to Joe, he had been doing some BMX riding and had landed very hard and had felt a little bit of pain in his arm. I can't remember if it was shoulder or bicep. And so we don't know if this neck pain that happened about 3 days before was related to the supposed aneurysm or not. There's going to be a lot of speculation that it had to have something to do with anabolic steroids or performance-enhancing drugs. Joel Lindner was very open, honest, and transparent and told us everything that he was doing. In his younger days, he did admit that he had been abusing performance-enhancing drugs, mainly steroids, and that this was not healthy for both his body and his mind. In particular, he was very much against the use of tren. He did not think this was a drug that anyone should ever use. Joel did not promote the use of steroids, and in fact, he wanted to help people to understand that you shouldn't be doing these things. Because he had abused it in his past, he had to go on HRT. And so because he had such an incredible physique, many people assumed he's not really just on HRT. There's no way he could have a physique like that. But if you look back at his genetics when he was younger, the amount of muscle that he had, very easy to see that because this guy's genetics were that good, that even with lower doses, he could have a physique like that. More recently, he ended up doing 2 competitions in men's physique trying to earn a pro card. I did, in fact, help to coach him for this. And so I know exactly what he was taking for these competitions. And many of you are thinking, oh, he probably upped the doses so high and that's what caused him to get a heart attack. But I can assure you, he was taking less than what most beginners would take on their very first cycles. And so I'm not going to say exactly what he took. I do believe that's private information. I can tell you, he was not taking very high doses whatsoever. One thing I do know is that Joe Lindner struggled to stay that lean all the time. He was constantly battling hunger and was drinking a ton of coffee. I believe he said at one point he was drinking 4 liters a day. And if the coffee had a lot of caffeine, which is a stimulant, this can dramatically reduce your appetite. Now, we all know that the combination of anabolic steroid use and vigorous weightlifting can lead to left ventricular hypertrophy, but we also know that if you take a lot of stimulants, this can place a greater demand on the heart. If you're always amped up from caffeine, which is preventing you from being as hungry, you're taking stims of any kind, even though caffeine is 100% legal, it's still a drug. This combination of factors could have led to potential arrhythmias in the heart. Just think of it. Your heart is changing shape. It's changing sizes. And so the chances of something going wrong, even if it's small, are greatly enhanced. And so if you're thinking, oh, I can take steroids, I'll just use low doses, it won't happen to me. Well, look at Joe Lindner, 30 years of age. Guy was a phenomenal athlete. He was doing cardio, eating healthy. The guy was super fit. And yet it happened to him. Also, have you seen how vascular Joe Lindner always is? The veins are pushing out through his skin, almost bursting through him. And perhaps, and remember, I'm not a doctor, But could that have been because his body demanded more blood? That he had to increase the circulation? Did he have an increase in red blood cells? Did he have increased blood plasma volume? Remember, when you take steroids, it can affect your hematocrit. You can get more red blood cells, and the volume of blood underneath, it can go up. When you have more blood, in particular more red blood cells, the blood gets thicker, compared to being more like molasses as opposed to water. If you have thicker blood, you're more likely to get a heart attack and or a stroke. And with the use of anabolic steroids, perhaps he could develop athero or arteriosclerosis. And one more thing, Joel Lindner, perhaps he's most famous for this, his alien DNA, the fact that he could make his chest muscles dance, all the striations quivering back and forth just by stretching out his chest. When that happens, and remember, I'm not a doctor, could it not be from an electrolyte imbalance? And so perhaps that's a sign that something was going on in his body, that perhaps the electrolytes, they weren't all in balance. I don't think it's a normal occurrence for your body to do this on any given day throughout your life. And so I don't think this has anything to do with his cholesterol. I do believe that he was getting blood work done. They would have noticed something like this. And so remember, just because you're getting regular blood work, it doesn't prove that there's nothing going on inside your body. Blood work can help, but it can't find everything. And so nobody knows for sure what he did or didn't take, but what we do know is 30 is far too young to be taken away from us. And so if this has anything to do with performance-enhancing drugs, or it's simply some predetermined genetic condition that he suffered from, perhaps in the future we'll find out. But as of right now, to me, this is shocking news, to be only 30 years of age and to pass away. Joel Lindner was loved by millions of fans. He never had anything bad to say about anyone. Loved this guy. He was a great guy. Sad to see him go. Ending it here.
You're opening up the door and it's like all these unlimited possibilities are coming in because you're asking like, how? But before you say, no, I cannot. It's like, or you say, how I can. Also, you can always find a way. That's why, again, we come back. Listen to the right people online, motivate yourself and inspire, and use these things to become a stronger individual.